Good evening and hello everybody. Welcome. Welcome to my home office. And this is my first session on the 12 ways of expanding your mental agility training. So, as I said in my introduction, I'm kind of like your coach for the sport of mental agility. And I asked you to think about one of those moments when you had an aha, because that's what we're looking for in mental agility. You've already learned so many things, and it's not true what they said that we only use 10% of our brain. No, we use all of our brain. It's how well do we use our brain? So then you've got certain skills, and each one of us has things we've spent a lot of time on. Maybe it's on something like golf, or playing a musical instrument, or typing, or just talking with a certain gender or child. So we focus on that and we practice, we develop. We can develop any one of our mental agilities. That's underneath that new understanding of how we can do brain scans and see neuroplasticity. So our ability to be mentally agile is endless. We can be using our brains and building our minds for our entire lifespan. So I wanted to share the beginnings of going down those roads where you don't get caught and finding the new doorways in your mind where you can go there and practice and access a whole nother part of who you can be and how you can think. Because we understand in psychology that the beginnings of everything is how you think. And the very beginnings of how we think starts with the words that we have. So notice, if we don't have a word or a picture about something, we don't think about it. It doesn't occur to us. We don't perceive it. And what one of my heroes, Dr. Bruce Perry, says, he's one of the great world experts on measuring our brains and how much our brains do which tasks. And he says that one of the most important measures in our childhood for how we learn to grow and access certain parts of our thinking depends on our mother's vocabulary. Notice vocabulary, her words, her ability to say things and communicate things and to mirror things. Well, we can expand that anytime we want to. We can decide to learn a whole new profession. I'll never forget, I was pretty disconcerted and taken aback when I got a job, very glad that I got the job, way back when, in typesetting and advertising, making print ads. Having no idea of that field, not having been trained in it, I had a wonderful boss and mentor who was very patient with me, but it took me a long time just to understand the vocabulary that she was using with photography, with layouts, with designs. I ended up learning it well, loving it, and using it in various aspects of my personal journey ever since. And even now I use it when I'm preparing my handouts and doing broadcasts like this, because I'm in the presence of words and the words on paper. So you have certain things that you've developed. I want us to consider helping you look at some new things that you may not have looked at before. So we get put in a mental box by our culture. And the old ways sometimes are very valuable, and we stand on them like a rock. But sometimes they get in our way. Sometimes you feel like you're stuck in a rut and you can't stop thinking certain ways, and then it makes you feel bad about yourself or anxious or really frustrated. Sometimes you feel like you're in a box and there's no way out. There is. There's always a way out. There's a kid's joke that you may know. It's, what's the biggest nation? And the biggest nation, of course, is our imagination. Our imagination, our ability to think is infinite. Truly, truly infinite. And so that gives me the courage to say, I can show you some new doorways and I can help you learn mental agility. So what we do is we pick one piece to work on, because of course that's how we learn things. We start with a building block and we learn how to wield that and get really good at it. The one that I'm going to introduce tonight is courage. There's a distinction between courage and bravery. Some people overlay the two. Courage is something that we develop, something that we can learn, something that we can practice. Bravery is a quality that we walk around with. So I made myself a little note here that freedom, this is a quote from Charles Péguy. He said, freedom is a system based on courage. So that's why I chose courage tonight. And we'll be looking for the next 12 weeks at 12 different mental aspects that are not just a noun about us, but an ability, a mental ability. And so I wanted to choose courage because it helps us handle hardships. It helps us handle whatever is disconcerting internally and externally. If we develop courage, it gives us so much strength and optimism. We're no longer a victim. Courage is a virtue that's based on choice in terms of a cause that we believe in or we care about, while we are facing our own fear, pain, danger inside ourselves or in the world, while we're facing something disconcerting, that we choose to be courageous. Now, the distinction between courage and bravery is a quality that people have where they don't have any fear. Something happens and they're brave, they just do it, they don't have any hold back externally or internally. Courage we're going to develop. So, you've heard that book that says, if you have fear, face your fear and do it anyway. And if we have a motto like that, it's kind of like a quick little thing that we pull into our mind and a tool that we use. And one of my favorite writers, her motto is, why not? I like that. Some people say carpe diem. Whatever your motto is, that's kind of a talisman and a benchmark that can help you pause in the middle of something that's painful or frightening or threatening. And wait a minute, let me come back to what's here today, what's here right now, and who am I right now in the most positive sense? What do I care about? And if you want to ask me a question, text me. Text me at my phone number 214-636-5889. That's 214-636-5889. It's on my website. It's everywhere. So you can get my cell phone anytime you want to Google me. And if you have a question, text me and I will talk to you about that. Okay. This is from a remarkable author, and it's a book called Soul Sisters, The 5 Sacred Qualities of a Woman's Soul. Well, of course, courage is for men and women, but I loved this example that she gave for someone living courageously. And I'd like you to consider for yourselves a time when you had to be courageous and maybe you weren't, or maybe you were. And to think about other situations that you're going to face which will require you to be courageous. Things where you're facing the ocean of your own pain that you're carrying that's never been grieved. things where you have to say something difficult to a loved one. You know you have to say it. You know it has to be said. You don't want to hurt your feelings, but you have to be courageous enough to be honest and tell the truth. So she talks about the Grimke sisters coming from a South Carolina plantation. Sarah and her sister Angelina were raised in an environment of wealth and high social standing. They were also first-hand witnesses to the cruelty of slavery, and as women were denied the rights enjoyed by men, the right to vote, to hold public office, or to even have a voice in church affairs. In 1837, these two respectable sisters shocked the establishment of their time by lecturing to mixed-sex audiences on the subject of abolitionism. Then they went a step further and they addressed the legislature of the state of Massachusetts. Until that day, no woman had ever spoken publicly to a legislative body. The courage it took for Sarah to do this is apparent in her description. And this is bringing yourself to your courage. Quote, "I never was so near fainting under the tremendous pressure of feeling. My heart almost died within me. The novelty of the scene, the weight of responsibility, the ceaseless exercise of mind through which I had passed for more than a week, altogether sunk me to the earth. I well nigh despaired." So that's what she was holding internally. And yet she stood tall, she stayed there, and she made the address. Slightly built, dressed in a gray Quaker dress, her deep blue eyes framed by dark curls, Angelina challenged the standing room only audience before her. "I stand before you as a repentant slaveholder. I stand before you as a moral being, and as a moral being I feel that I owe it to the suffering slave and to the deluded master, to my country and to the world, to do all that I can to overturn a system of complicated crimes built upon the broken hearts and prostrate bodies of my countrymen in chains and cemented by the blood, sweat, and tears of my sisters in bonds." Touches my heart just thinking about it. That's courage. She had a cause that she cared for. And she stood despite her fear and despite the danger, and she did have repercussions. She and her sister were never allowed to go back to the South. But she built her courage, she held on to her courage, and she did something despite all of the threats that she knew was right and that she felt she needed to do. So each one of us has repeated things in our life that bring us to that place of courage, where we call upon our courage, where we know we have to stand tall and do the right thing. Now, sometimes it's inside ourselves where we need to stand tall and do the right thing. Choose in essence the high road. So I have some mind food for you. And the way we do this is we practice courage very methodically and intelligently, bit by bit, day by day. There are 4 steps to this, and the handout that you can download delineates those 4 steps very clearly. So, the first step is the ability to self-observe. We're going to do what we call mental yoga. And in the East, it's called Raja Yoga, or the kingly path, which is mental yoga. And we practice that by watching our thoughts, watching our words, and watching our behavior. So this is, of course, bit by bit, which is why it's a noble path, because it's permanent. The first thing, it starts out by watching yourself, which is the ability to be in the observer mode. Sometimes that requires that we have the ability to hold two thoughts in our mind at the same time. One, the thought of what we're talking, if we're talking to somebody, and what we're doing. And the other is watching ourselves and thinking about what we're saying. And I'm sure you've encountered those people who don't have the ability to self-observe. And that means that in a conversation with them, they're not aware of the time they're taking or the influence they're having. They're just conscious of their own thoughts. So in terms of mental agility, we want to be able to hold those two things at the same time. While you're talking, to observe how you're talking, to observe what you're saying, and to observe, what do I think about this? How good am I doing? And so that takes practice in itself. So that's the first ability, to self-observe. The second is to have a serving of good mind food. Remember the vocabulary? The words, the ideas, the thoughts. And so I have good mind food, and I call it a virtue scroll, and it's a scroll about courage, which you read once or twice a day, in the morning or at night, to hold in your mind what courage sounds like, what courage feels like, and what courage looks like. Then number 3 is a retrospection. That is, at the end of the day, you think backwards. So this is another part of mental agility, part of mental yoga, retrospection. This, as far as I know, began way back with the Pythagoreans, who were on a search for excellence, human excellence. And so it's like doing gymnastics, really. It's an athletic thing for your mind to do, because we typically think this, then this, then this, then this. We're thinking linear in a fashion that goes from past to future. And we think about it when we read from left to right. This is retrospection. This is using your mind to think backwards. So that means that you hold in your mind the idea of being courageous. And then look at yourself, self-observe in retrospect at the end of the day, and holding on to the idea of courage, think backwards. Well, just before I went to bed, I needed to brush my teeth and I didn't. Oh, if I was going to be courageous and do the thing that I think is the right thing to do, even though I had internal resistance, I would have brushed my teeth. So I'm going to give myself, and this is the recording aspect where you turn into a scientist. You give yourself just a minus. Say, I could have been more courageous there. And then before I brushed my teeth, what did I do before then? Well, I was doing a video game or watching TV or talking to somebody. Was there any element of courage involved with that? So courage means standing up for what's right, good, and true, and what you care about. So sometimes I have a regret because I watched a movie too late. Well, if I had stopped to self-observe before I started looking at that movie, and I looked at what time it was, I would have said, probably not a good idea, and made a decision to watch that movie another time. But if that moment I didn't self-observe, I didn't think it through, and I watched the movie anyway, and then I got really tired, I wasn't doing the right thing, the courageous thing. So I give myself a minus there. Now, if I had decided to wait and watch that movie another time, I give myself a plus there. etc. And then what did I do before that? Well, we had dinner and there were dishes. If I did the dishes, plus. If I didn't do the dishes, minus. And so then continue to think backwards through your day, bit by bit. That's retrospection. And just giving yourself a little plus or a minus when you notice that it had to do with something that required you to be courageous or to do the right thing. Then just leave it like that. Just got pluses and minuses for today and go to sleep. And tomorrow, at the end of the day, listen to or read the Courage Scroll. And so I'll give you a link to the Courage Scroll. I have read it and Jack has recorded it for us with a slideshow of the text so that you can listen to the Courage Scroll and you can listen to it and read it, or you can just read it so that you're feeding yourself the healthy mind food, the good mind food of the naming of courage, the words, the phrases, the feelings, little scenarios, little times when it's an example of when you might have or when you might not have. We don't want to be mean in any way. That never works. We don't want to be judgmental in any way. That never works. We just want to be like a scientist where we take, okay, this is what worked, this is what didn't work. Just the data. Just taking the data. That's all we're doing. And then again, the next day, it may be that you had the same experience and you weren't courageous again. And so you get another minus. But in my experience, and I did this every day without fail for years until it was just second nature to me, I no longer had those circular forms of thinking. I no longer kept myself in a mental box of negativity. I changed my mind with this mental yoga. So I did it. I know it. Every time I teach it, people love it because it works. So be investigative. Take the data and do not be unkind because this is yoga after all. It's a mental skill set. It's a mental sport, and there's no place here for being unkind or discourteous, okay? And so then, in my experience, how it works is about 3 times, pretty much across the board. So if you experience something where you needed courage and you weren't courageous, the next time you experience something where maybe you needed to say something to somebody that you were very, very worried about saying, or it was a hard thing to say, or it was bad news to deliver, and then you avoided it again. But you noticed while you were avoiding it that you were avoiding it, saying, oh, I'm avoiding it here. I could be more courageous. The third opportunity, you'll be anticipating, oh my gosh, I should be saying this now. I should be delivering this, and but then you don't. The 4th time you do it. The 4th time you mastered it. So that's truly mental agility, where you practice and practice. Nobody tells you about this. Nobody tells you what to do. Nobody's running your mind for you. It's you with you. And when you practice it and you kind of go in and out of it 3 times, on the 4th time, you change. And I can pretty much guarantee you that you'll never go back. In a situation like that, you now know how to handle yourself, and you decided to. It was your choice to be courageous despite the difficulties and stand strong and tall inside yourself and do what you knew was the right thing to do. I've had quite a few people thank me for the Courage Scroll. Sometimes people I've never met from other places, and how it's helped them through a hard time. So there are dozens of ways that we're stressed or that we need to be courageous. All different experiences of our life where we need to stand strong and true and do what we know is the right thing for us, for what we stand for. Just like this wonderful woman in the face of a public gathering, standing up for something that she knew was right. Now, that's an extreme example of bravery. A lot of us will never have to do something like that. But sometimes it's telling a loved one or a teenager, one of your kids, the right thing, even if there's pushback. For us to do the courageous and right thing gives them an example of, this is how it's done. Even though it's difficult, I can do it. Takes away all of your victimhood status and puts the choice in your hands so that you get outside of the old thinking boxes. You don't get stuck in a thinking rut, and you don't come up against a dead end in your thinking. Because when we come up against that dead end, if we understand, quote unquote, encounters with futility, where it's like, no, I'm not going to keep pushing, I'm actually not going to be stubborn anymore, because if I relax this and I stop and I say, what is the right thing to do and what do I really care about? What happens is a piece of mental agility where we turn a corner and we think in a new direction. But if you catch yourself being stubborn or needing to stay right, or one of those old negative ways that feels real bad when you're around somebody who does that, you can choose to do something very successful and very different based on what you truly care about. So that's the 4 steps of true mental agility. Now it makes sense, right? And, if you don't do it every day, don't judge yourself. Even if you do it 1 or 2 days, you'll notice something has shifted. Feeding yourself the healthy mind food. If you just want to play my YouTube channel, it's the audio, just put it in your headphones and just play it. You're feeding your mind words and ideas and solutions, puzzle fixes of the right words, the words about courage, because it's a human ability, it's a human virtue, it's a part of strong character, it's a part of strength in hardships or in stressful times. It will always serve you. And if you know you have courage and you know that you're going to do the difficult thing and stand up for what is right, you have that confidence that's like, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email me. You can go to my website and there's a box there where you can ask any questions, and you can automatically email me. It's heather@heathercarlile.com. You can text me any questions to my phone number. And if you send me an email or text me, I'll send you some links, and you can come to my page here on my website and download the handouts for this evening as an introduction to mental agility and finding new doors in your mind. Once you walk through those doors, you will never be the same. You have a new vista. You can see, wow, I could do this. So tonight I opened the vista of courage. We walked to the doorway of courage. We opened the doors. We thought about it, and we have some words about it and some stories about it. I'm very interested in the stories that you have that have required you to be courageous, or which will require you to be courageous. So thank you so much for visiting with me. I look forward to any questions that you have over the progress of the next 12 weeks. So I'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye. Oh, and my motto is, know yourself. This is it, isn't it? Know yourself, treasure life, and love others.